Good morning. My name is Randy Wohlgemuth. I'm here with my brother Dale Wohlgemuth, and today we want to talk about a little bit of history of crop inputs from our family, and then we'll wrap up with some regenerative practices and thoughts that we have on where we've come from and where we are right now. Dale, why don't we just talk a little bit about memories of crop inputs that our father Jake Wohlgemuth started back in the early 60s.
I remember my first, how would you call it, memory of fertilizer or crop inputs, I guess call it that, but it was fertilizer bags stored in a warehouse at the old feed mill in Landmark, which was the one that burnt down in the mid 60s. So I was like 5 years old, walking around the warehouse, and I guess protocols in those days were less stringent, so kids were allowed in the workplace. But yeah, I remember the place burning and the fertilizer, whatever, I don't know if it burnt, but it was there. And then the next memory that was probably more vivid is the St. Anne blender, which we call it St. Anne blender because it was at St. Anne, Manitoba. It was a Cominco kind of blending facility with a big warehouse, and I remember helping. This is like later, I wasn't a kid anymore, I was a teenager, helping unload boxcars of bagged fertilizer and watching the guys blend and load fertilizer spreaders out of that plant, which was pretty impressive, but now it would be tiny. So those are my early memories. That's the 60s and early 70s.
Yes, I remember those days too. The warehouse, we had what I thought then was a big warehouse in Landmark, and bags stacked to the ceiling, and everything was bags. Elephant brand was
Yes.
brand.
Yeah.
Elephant brand fertilizer. I don't know how they came up with that, but anyway, that was an iconic brand all across Western Canada that I know of anyway. I don't know where else, but yeah, that was my first memory. And then, like you say, the St. Anne plant with the bulk plant, I think it held maybe 4 rail cars.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then unloading box cars there, and then we finally got a forklift, and it was pretty amazing. But probably the marketing promotion memory that I have is I'd watch them spread like 40 acres with nitrogen and then 40 acres with no fertilizer.
Oh yeah.
And then watch the results, and it would be a lot greener. That's how you actually convince people to use fertilizer back in the early 60s. Also, Dad was selling chemical like 2,4-D and amine 80 already before fertilizer. That, I think he started in the late 50s. He started the feed mill in 54, which I was born in 55, but probably when I was 5 years old, I remember the chemical cans, 5-gallon pails.
Oh, okay.
So that was actually before fertilizer, but fertilizer came right after that. Anyway, yeah, the protocols were very different then.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, those are kind of the first memories, and then later on, of course, there's a big changes came along. One of them was liquid fertilizer. It came from Simplot and Brandon initially, and then we also brought some in from the U.S., but mostly from Brandon, and that really changed things a lot, where people were using liquid, and of course we grew that part of the business pretty substantially over the years. But any other significant changes that you want to share, Dale?
Well, when I made my notes about this, I kind of went by the decades, and the 70s were obviously still pretty, I don't know what you call it, early stages, but the 80s we started using liquid fertilizer. Our dad's, that was in the 70s obviously, but I remember being, operating the fertilizer plant in Swan River, and we were using liquid fertilizer with pre-emergent herbicides, which was cutting edge. And we also got, in the 80s, I think it was whole grass or some pre-emergent or some post-emergent wild oat herbicides, which were also they shifted the dynamics of a lot in the crop production world. We also got our first computers in the 80s. It was little mini computers to build blends. We were doing them by hand, with a calculator, which was probably a good learning practice to know what you're doing. But yeah, everything just kept evolving, and the 90s were high clearance sprayers, and pre-harvest Roundup was a big game changer for farmers in Western Canada. Herbicide tolerant canola, they started arriving in the 90s. Some of the genetics were changing for canola, obviously disease resistance. So a lot of things changed pretty rapidly in the 90s. Big shifts in cropping numbers, like the canola acres. I remember them being in like 5 million was a big crop, and then it was 8 and then 10, and now every year it's 20 in Western Canada, 20 million acres. So that's because of some of those changes. Then obviously in the 90s, into the 2000s, we started seeing GPS and the guidance systems. Seeding equipment got way better, precise and accurate, wider, so capacity was good. The genetics, like we talked about canola, and now it's straight cut canola, or the wheat. Hardwood wheat has changed a lot too with better varieties. So, and yeah, it keeps coming. Like autonomous equipment now is pretty much, nobody even bats an eye about that. They drive themselves. I mean, they're still operators, but they probably could drive themselves for the most part. Yeah, I mean, it's changing faster, seems like every year.
Yeah, very, very significant changes. Like you say, the seed used to be bin run, and now it's, a lot of it's, well, I remember Iola being the first seed that was
hybrid.
Yeah. Yeah, it was huge. So sending loads of that.
Yeah.
Well, and going back to, you talk about pre-emergent, like Avidex and Truffland.
Yes.
They were huge. You bought Avidex and sending lots as well of bulk.
Yes.
And then Edge came after Truffland for canola, which was a game changer for a number of years. But yeah, and then technology took over, and it's been good. I think it was really good for agriculture and for food production. We're switching gears just a little bit here from the history part. Is the regenerative ag seems to be, well, I'd say it's a very niche market right now from what I can see, but there seem to be some good characteristics for crop production, and it has grown over the last few years. And as you know, Ken Sabach and I started Regenerative Ag Systems business last fall. It's a consulting business for people who want to sell regenerative ag products. So Ken is more on the agronomic side, and I'm more on the business side. But as I watched that, and I did some work with some of those companies, and it seems like those products, well, there's a data to prove that they work. And from my perspective, they're a good alternative to the other stuff, which we used to sell lots of. And so, yeah, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on regen ag. I mean, it's a bit of a buzzword right now, but it's also, I think, there's also legitimacy to it as well.
Yeah, so I'm not involved in it personally, but our company sells some biological products. But I think for me, when I look back to even the 80s, where some are following half in certain parts of Western Canada, that's almost gone or is gone. To me, that was like a bad practice, because it really it wasn't regenerating the soil. It was conserving moisture, which probably was the right thing. But now with the new, like we talked about, all the new technology, that has helped regenerate or allow better practices, conserving moisture with better equipment. And we also, both of us, remember the zero till kind of, that's almost like the buzzword back then, and they were trying to bring that into practice, which would have been is a good practice in a lot of soil types, but they didn't have the right equipment or herbicides that could maybe work for them, or even the biological products. So it wasn't always profitable, but they had the right idea. That's how I looked at it. Continuous cropping with conservation tillage, to me, has been a really big part of making sure the soil doesn't erode. It conserves moisture. It's probably more profitable because you're not burning as much fuel. You maybe need less equipment, and weed control's better. Those are all parts of how this is evolving. And where we are now is like, I have a customer who sells cover crops for farmers, and they use that they bring in like multi-species, and it allows the soil to kind of maybe, I don't know if it's regenerate itself, but it's healthy for the soil, healthy roots. They also get green feed out of it. So those are all part of what I'm involved with, regenerative ag. And I think there's products like end stabilizers, which allow you to apply nitrogen at lower rates, or allow it to work more efficiently, and obviously lower the rates possibly helps the environment, or just make it more profitable.
Yes, no, I think you're right there. I've seen, I've seen some of the work that EcoT has done, and using more biological products for seed treating, and also for top dressing. It's pretty interesting, and there's other products like that out there too. And then of course the Omax fertilizer, low salt fertilizer, it's been an interesting addition to what's available. I mean, I go back to when our dad first started selling fertilizer. Well, they didn't have fertilizer, but back in the 30s and 40s, they were farming land that was fresh land.
Yes.
That had never been farmed. So no one ever didn't take the nutrients out, right? So they start doing that, and eventually you're taking out, but you're not putting back in. Now some are fallible, like you say, that didn't really put nitrogen back in the soil, or phosphate or whatever, right? So anyway, that's the reason why you needed fertilizer and you need a chemical for all the weeds. And then here we are, 2025, and using biologicals to replace the other products, which seems like a good thing. And if you can make as much money or more money doing it, of course, if you can regenerate your soil, that's going to be a big boost as well. So yeah, I think it's very interesting times, and I think that as more products get developed, I think it can become more than just a niche.
Yeah. Well, something I read yesterday was it was Keystone Ag Producers that sent out a publication, and they have lots of they address a lot of issues, and one of them is this, farming, regenerative ag, or farming green. And we all know, part of farmers have to make money. They have to be profitable. And I think he's actually not around anymore. I can't remember his name, but his quote was, "Can you farm green if you're in the red?" And you have to make money with it. So if people want us to farm, or if we want to conserve our farming practices and make sure we're regenerating the soil, it still has to be profitable. It's not something that you can do without, with some, maybe there are some, crop prices have to be profitable. That's how I would look at it for a part of it. The biologicals aren't free either. They cost money. They're usually, it's maybe less money, or makes your fertilizer more efficient, crop grow more. So those are all factors.
You're totally right. Everything costs some money, and it's a matter of what's economical. And yeah, you want to farm green, but you want to farm in a way that's profitable as well. And we need food. If we don't have food, we're not going to survive. It's a very important part of what Dad always said. Food production is an honorable profession.
Yes,
involved, right?
Feeding the world.
So yeah. Okay, well, I think that's what. Anything else, Dale?
No, I think that's. I don't know if we've covered everything, but those are some of the thoughts I've had, and I've watched it kind of evolve over the years. There's things that we do that we may not think are regenerating, but they're better practices than they were, and we need to evolve. Obviously, there's another generation coming that will need to farm and produce food.